in order for there to be nezek, the shor, the ox that gored has to be nechasim hamiyuchadim. What exactly does nechasim hamiyuchadim mean? So the first opinion was that basically it has to be owned by somebody. Somebody has to actually own it. If a ownerless animal gores your animal and then disappears into the wilderness, you're not entitled to it. And even if you catch it, if somebody caught it before you and decided to take it, you can't collect from it. Okay. Ravina says, let's say a guy, the animal gores, and then the guy sanctifies the animal. He dedicates it to the temple, or he makes it ownerless. In that scenario, he's exempt from damages. And this is the opinion of Rabbi Yehudah. Tanya, we looked in the Bryce as well. Yes, talking on Rabbi Yehudah. Rabbi Yehudah said, moreover, I feel potter. If the animal gored and then it became either ownerless or hektish, dedicated to the temple, you're exempt from paying the damages. Shenemar, the verse states, "V'huad bebolov tehimis ish." 1 second. So v'huad bebolov means it's a shorham wood, and what did it do? It kills somebody, and the animal is killed, and also the owner has to make a payment. This is the payment for a muad that kills a person was called kaifer. Okay, what do we see from there? The ownership at the time when the animals is stood up in court for the court case, the animal is going to be killed. It has to be the same owner. So the Gemara asks, you don't need actually the final decision of the court, which is the animal's killed, because that the end of the verse says the animal will be killed. Presumably that requires that the owner is warned and the animal is killed, all have to be done at the same time, meaning the same ownership class. So the animal being stoned is referring to the conclusion of the court case. Okay, basically, Rabbi Yehudah is saying that the animal has to be in the same ownership class from the time the owners were warned. That would be when it became a shorham wood, after it had already gored 3 times, until the animal is stoned, or right before it's stoned. If that's the case, then the nechasim yichad means it has to be the same ownership class. If the guy has the ox and then he makes it ownerless, then he's exempt from paying damages. Got it?
They made it ownerless before or after?
Even afterwards. Yeah, it could be. Yeah.
Is there some sort of parallel in general secular law, I imagine, this phenomenon?
Okay. With the exception of a domain that's set aside for the mazik, for the one who damaged. Okay. This is really going to take us, we'll do this for a while here. Yeah, for Mishnah. Okay. Basically, this is a major question we'll have to address now, which is, so let's go through. You have public domain, right? Shein and Regel are exempt in Rosh Hashanah. Shein again is pleasurable consumption. Regel is casual damage. They're exempt. Why are they exempt? Because the animals belong, and the animals have a right to be there, and it's yours. If you want to bring your stuff into Rosh Hashanah, you'll have to be careful of how you take care of it.
That's what animals do. I mean, it's just their general.
Okay. Now, let's try to imagine a little bit of a different scenario. Let's say the property is owned by I own the property, okay, by me, and my oxen are known to be wild. And you come into my property and you get gored by my ox. Am I chayav or potter?
Did you have it signed up saying bad bull?
Let's say I did. Let's say I did.
Not obligated.
Shouldn't be obligated because why? There's no business being there. It's exactly what the Gemara says. With the exception of domain that's set aside for the one who owns the bull. Why? The Amar Lay, because they say to you, Tarcha B'Shusi, my boy, why is your ox in my house? You never invited him. Okay. Or Shus Hanizik B'Mazik. This is really the discussion to the end. The different domains, what the status is in each of them. So let's say you have a domain that's set aside for the nizik and the mazik. So let's be clear. If I own the aggressing bull and you come into my property, I'm exempt. Not only am I exempt from Karen, I'm also exempt from Shane and Rego. In other words, if you bring your stuff into my property and my bull comes out and consumes it, or casually damages it, or gores you, I'm completely exempt. Tarcha b'shusim my body. What were you doing here? It's not your property. You have no right to be here. Okay. In a public domain, Shane and Regal exempt. But Karen, you're chayav chatzin ezek. Now, what happens in the opposite case, where the victim animal, the aggressing animal, enters the domain of the owner of the victim animal? So the guy had a lovely petting zoo, and sure enough, an angry bull came in and wrecked the whole zoo. Okay, angry bull. What is that?
Oh, Shane.
Karen.
Yeah.
Karen. Angry bull is Karen. Now, how much do I have to pay? Chatzi nezek or nezek shalom? So we'll get to it. It's a debate. Full payment or half payment? So there isn't. So it's machlokes. It's a debate over here. In other words, Karen fundamentally is half payment because an animal is typically not angry. It's hard. Nobody can really expect when their animal's going to be angry. It's hard to know. So we'll discuss exactly why later on. The Gemara has a long discussion about it. But it could be that if it's in the domain of the victim animals, then it should be nezek shalom, it should be full payment because you have no business being there. So you want to say your animal's half payment when he damages in the public domain, fine. That I can understand. But in my domain, it's a question. We'll see more details. We'll get to it in a minute. The next question is, what happens if we both have permission to be there? What's the story? So, in other words, let's say it's the domain of the mazik, but he lets the nizik be there. Is he responsible for what his animals did? So the Gemara says, let's see, Gemara Omer Chisda, Omer Avimi, Chotzer HaShutfen. It's a partnership between the victim animal and the aggressing animal's owners. Chayev al Shane val Regal. You're chayev because of Shane and Regal. Bavakamma, and this is the interpretation of the Mishnah. The Mishnah says, Chutz mereshusam yichedes lamasik, the potter. The conclusion of the Mishnah is that in the domain of the aggressing animal's owner, you're exempt from damages. If somebody comes into my property, my bulls are on my property, and he decides to mess around with them, that's his fault, not mine. Okay. 1 second. Okay. However, but in a scenario where it's a partnership, then if damage did occur, I would be liable to pay because he did have permission to be there. He did. If there was a partnership between the aggressing animal's owner and the victim animal owner, then you would be liable for damage because he was permitted to be there. Rabbi Dovid says, "Potter ala shein vala regal." He's exempt. This is how the mission is to be interpreted. One's liable in all domains, except for a domain that's set aside for the aggressing animal's owner, or a domain that both the aggressing animal and the victim animal's owners have permission to be there. Nami Potter, you're also exempt from damages. Okay, and the main reason for this is the verse that talks about Shein and Regal says the key word, ubiyar b'stei acher. You have to go into somebody else's fields. Ubiyar b'stei acher. It's a critical word. Stay acher, somebody else. If it's in if the nizik had a right to, if the mazik, the damage, the aggressing animal had a right to be there, he didn't go to stay acher. He didn't go. He had a right to be where he was. Therefore, he didn't travel to a different field. He didn't go to a different field, and you're exempt. Now, according to this version, the final line of the Mishnah, that comes to refer to Karen. Okay, so Shmuel, this makes sense according to Shmuel. Why? Because according to Shmuel, Mava is Shein, right? Shar in the Mishnah is Regel. So the first Mishnah before obviously talks about Regel and Shein. And this Mishnah concludes with Karen. When this damage is Chava Mazik L'Shalom, the aggressing animal's owner is obligated to pay. El Rav the Amar Tona Shar of Kollel the Shar, but according to Rav it says Mava is Adam Hamazik, it's a person. So when the Mishnah said Shar, we said Shar includes all three types of Shar. So then what exactly what's that coming to include? Let's see, what's that coming to include? The Gemara says, it's including this brisa. What's that referring to? You have a borrower, a free watchman, a paid watchman, or a renter, where the animal, an animal did damage in their domain. What's the halacha? Time shalom chatz and ezek and wood mishalom ezek shalom. The exact scenario we'll get to in a moment. But whatever the scenario is, it's damage of Karen, and we say this chatz and ezek half damages. Okay, nifritza b'layla. If, however, the gate was broken in at nighttime, or robbers tried to steal it and they broke the gate, the yotz of Ezika and the animal went out into damage, potter, he's exempt. Okay, so according to Rava, it's coming to include that a shemer chinam is liable for failing negligence with somebody else's ox. Okay, so let's get to the specifics now. Hey Chidami, what's the scenario? Hey Chidami, is it a scenario where the aggressing animal belonged to the mashal, to the lender, i.e., this was the animal that was the aggressor was the animal that was loaned, borrowed, shayel, the tur de shayel, to the animal of the borrower, his animal was the victim. The borrowed animal was the aggressor. The borrower's animal was the victim. So if that's the case, lemalei. So 1 second. So hold on a second. So I own an ox, right? I lend it to you. In your domain, my ox kills your ox. Now, let's say my ox didn't kill your ox; it killed the stranger's ox, Eric's ox. Who'd be liable to pay? You, the borrower. Because the borrower is full responsibility always, even for scenarios that are less in his control. So ilo azik ba'alma ba'is shlumei. If your animal, if my animal damaged somebody else, you would be liable to pay for it for not watching it. Hash the aska turadidach the ino shlumei. Now that damaged your own animal, it's my responsibility to pay. No, you have to take the loss. You had a responsibility, you failed the responsibility, and you took a loss because of it. So it's your responsibility. That loss is yours. El the aski tur the shayl tur the mashal. The opposite. So Jules' animal killed my animal. Right? I'm the borrower. I'm the lender. I'm sorry. Jules the borrower. Jules' animal killed my animal. Okay. Tur the mashal.
My animal was the borrowed.
No. Your actual an animal that you owned kills the borrowed animal. So lemele, hold on. Ilu itzik ma'alma by Sashlume Kulatura. Hash the Aska Turi Dach Pagan is good Mishalam is slay. 1 second. Okay. It's as follows. let's say so what happens? So Jules' own animal killed the borrowed animal. Now, let's say the animal was killed by a stranger. So what would happen? Eric's animal killed the borrowed animal while you were watching it. So Eric pays you half the damages, and you owe me full damages because you borrowed the animal. So you're responsible to make it whole. It doesn't make a difference if it's your fault or not your fault. Shoyal is chayav and einsim. Even if it wasn't his fault, it's his fault. Even if it wasn't his fault, he's still chayav. Okay, so in this case, again, I lent you an ox. If Eric's ox kills your ox, then Eric will pay you half damages, and you owe me full damages. Now, if that's the case, if your animal kills my ox while it's in your domain, why should it be any different? You still have to make me whole. You shouldn't have to get away with half damages. You should have to pay the whole thing. So the Gemara says, okay, okay, so the borrowed animal killed your animal. And what are we referring to? Okay, very interesting scenario. Jules knows that my animal is a little bit wild. So he said, okay, here's the deal. I'm borrowing it. I'll make sure it isn't damaged, but I won't make sure it doesn't damage. I'll make sure it's not a victim. I won't make sure it's not an aggressor. I'm exempting myself from its aggressor. So what happened? But okay, if that's the case, now if my animal kills Jules' animal, what's going to happen? So then so Jules is not responsible for it. I'm responsible. So therefore, I would have to pay chatzi nezek, regular carrot. Yeah, and that's because it's my responsibility to watch my animal, and Jules has exempted himself, exempted that responsibility. Therefore, because he's removed that responsibility, I would be liable to pay. Okay, let's look at the end of the brisa. Let's say that the gate was broken in midnight. And the animal goes out and does damage. He's exempt. If this happened by daytime, in other words, you had time to realize that the gate was broken, time to fix it. So then, Jules, the borrower, would be chayav. Nor says, why would be chayav? Jules said, I am not taking responsibility that the animal won't be an aggressor. So the Gemara says, you're right. This is what the Mishnah says. In Kibul Olav Shmir Zakov, the brisa should be interpreted as follows. Let's say Jules did accept the responsibility that the animal would not be an aggressor. So then chayav, he would be chayav in this scenario. In other words, where my animal kills your animal, you would be chayav if you accepted that responsibility. However, but if it got out at nighttime, you didn't realize the fence was broken, or robbers released it, where it's 5 lines down on 14a. Zika Potter, he's exempt from damages because there's nothing you could have done. You didn't realize the fence was broken or that the robbers broke the fence. Samara says, "Aini v'atani Rav Yosef." This can't be because Rabbi Yosef taught. Okay, this goes back on the beginning of the Gemara. Rabbi Eliezer says a new concept. Okay, the concept is me and you own a property together. Why am I picking Steve? Me and Steve own a property together, right? And we both bring our animals, and my animal is the aggressor animal, and it consumes Steve's stuff, right? As everyone knows, Steve's stuff is very, very attractive to animals, makes them elevated, and the animal went and consumed, right? It's like $50 an ounce or something, extremely valuable product, and it consumes the whole store. Right, you can wreck a lot of damage very quickly that way. Yeah, the animal will be an elevated one, let's say. Okay, so what happens? So Rabbi Eliezer says, "What's the halacha? Potter, I'm exempt. Why? Because you need stay acher, somebody else's field." And this, we both own the field together. I'm entitled to have my animal there. Each of us responsibility to avoid bringing in valuable stuff. Okay, that's not. So the Gemara says that's the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer. Asks the Gemara, that's not the case. Tani Rav Yosef taught Chotzer Ashutfim v'Apundek. You have a courtyard of partners or a pundik. Pundik is like a hotel, a motel. Chayev. The chayev ben al shein v'al regel. Your chayev for shein and regel, so I would have to pay $50 an ounce. Is that what you charge? More.
No, 50, well, depends what. Yeah, 58.
They tell me it depends on the quality.
I don't know. I was just driving past someplace the other day, and it's the big signs. It's 50 ounces. 50 ounces.
an ounce is kind of getting towards the
Frankly, it makes sense.
Got it. Okay. So to Rabbi Eliezer, this is a significant question on Rabbi Eliezer. So Amalach Rabbi Eliezer would point out to you, do you think like Rabbi Eliezer, like in other words? So Rabbi Eliezer says, in a partnership, you're exempt from shein and regel. If Yosef says you're chayev for shein and regel, says Rabbi Eliezer, do you think I'm going to concede the last word of the conversation to Rabbi Yosef? Rabbi Yosef? No, I'm not conceding it. We have a debate amongst the brises. There's another brise that supports my opinion. Okay, so we'll go through the brisa, and then after we finish this gemara, then we'll explain the brisa. Vatanya, we learned. Our boa klol is higher. There are 4 categories of Shimon and Elazar would say. B'nezikin with regard to nezikin. Kol shir reshus lenizik v'lo lemazik chayev b'kol. If it's the victim animal's property, then you're chayev on everything. And like we mentioned before, this would include Karen full payment. If my animal goes into your property and wrecks the place, full payment. There's no exemption for Chatzi Nezek. If it's second, let's say it's my domain and you had no business being there, Potter, completely exempt. Potter Mikol. Okay, let's say we both had permission to be there. For example, it was a property that was owned in a partnership, or it was a valley. It was sort of an empty field, a park. I'm exempt from shein and regel. Basically, Karen. 1 second. Hold on. Okay, so this is a chotzer shutfin. You're exempt from shein and regel, which clearly supports the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer, because it has to be a steyacher, and it's not, because we both have a right to be here. But you're chayev for Karen chatzi nezek. Neither to this one nor to that one. It's a property that belongs to neither of them. Chayev by al shein val regel. You're chayev for shein and regel. And al negicha val neshich val negifa val arbitza val bita Karen tam shalom chatzi nezek mud mishalom nezek shalom. Okay. Katani miyas. One of the scenarios of the brisa was chatzor shutfim v'habeka potter val shein val regel. If we have a property that is owned jointly, a partnership, then I'm exempt for shein and regel. That is very clearly supports the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer. Kasha adodi. So we have a contradiction in the brisa that Rabbi Eliezer supports Rabbi Eliezer, and the brisa that supports Rabbi Yosef. So the Gemara says, okay. Okay, so let's explain. There are 2 different types of partnerships. The partnership of the brisa that says you're exempt is talking about when we both have permission to bring in both animals and food or grain. The brisa that says that you are liable for the actions of your ox, that brisa is talking about a scenario where you had a right to bring in your foodstuffs and grains, but did not have a right to bring in your ox. Because you had no right to bring in your ox, with regard to shein, it's considered the domain of the one of the victim. Gemara has taken. I'll prove it to you as well, because in each brisa we have a different analogy of what's an example of we talk about we have a courtyard that's owned in a partnership. In one brisa we compare it to a motel, and in the other brisa we compare it to a park. Well, what do you think the difference between a motel and a park is?
Motel is confined.
So motel is presumably not permitted for animals, whereas the park is permitted for animals to come. So therefore, this actually supports the differentiation. When we say that you're a chayev on shein and regel, we compare it to a motel, meaning a place where you had no right to bring your ox. When we say that you're parted from shein and regel, we say dumi debiko, like a valley park. Shmami, no, this is a proof that this distinction is a valid one. And if it's in a park, if the property allows you to bring the oxen, then you're exempt from shein and regel. If the partnership does not allow you to bring the oxen, you're chayev on shein and regel. Maskev Rav Zera. So Rav Zera asks, "Kivan imichadis leperes habeinu ubir b'stei achar v'laka." 1 second. Rav Zera says if the aggressing animal has a right to the owner of the aggressing animal has a right to bring in his foodstuffs, so that should not be called b'stei. It shouldn't be somebody else's field. If ultimately speaking, it's a partnership. So because he had no right to bring his ox, that makes it a stei achar. It makes it somebody else's field. Because in other words, the point of somebody else's field is in relationship to the ox. Is compared to considering the status of this ox. Is this another person's field? If the answer is yes, then if the ox goes in and does damage, he'd be chayev. And because the ox has no right to be there, it's called stei achar. Okay, we had two brises. They contradicted each other. So what was the resolution? He said one brise is referring to a place where oxen are permitted to go, and the other brise is talking about a place where oxen are not permitted to go, even though they're both partnerships. If the brises aren't disagreeing, maybe the original Amigrom, the Machlekes and Rav Chizda and Rav Elazar aren't disagreeing either. Rav Chizda, that says you're chayav and shein and regel, is talking about where the ox has no permission to go, and Rav Elazar says that you're potter and shein and regel is talking about where the ox was permitted to come into the partnership property. Amalei, and he said, yeah, it could be that there's no actual debate. Intim Salema Pligi, if you say there is a debate, it could be the debate is the Kushit Rav Zera would Peruka Abaya Pligi. The debate would be on Rav Zera's question and Abaya's answer, meaning, do we consider this a stei achar if the ox has no permission to be there? Stei achar means somebody else's field. Is it considered somebody else's field when it's a partnership, really, but the ox has no permission to be there? The rules of the partnership preclude the ox from participating, being there. Okay, so now we get to the same question of stei achar. Let's continue. Gufa arba klolos ben Elazar Omer. So back to the brayso we saw before. 4 rules, right? Ben izak culture is just a nizik v'loy lemazik chayav b'kol. If it's the domain of the victim, you're chayav on everything, even Karen, full payment for Karen, if it's the domain of the victim. Chayav b'kol al hakol tani doesn't say you're chayav on all damages. It says chayav b'kol, full payments. B'kulanezek, full payment, no half damages. Mani, whose opinion is this? Reb Tarfani. The Amar Reb Tarfan says Meshuna Karen b'chotzon. Nezek Karen is unique in the domain of the nizik. Nezek shalom mishalom. Karen would pay full payments. So the Gemara says, okay, aim a seifa. Loy lozeh v'loy lozeh. The property was owned by neither one. The property doesn't belong to either of them. Chayev b'al shein v'al regel. You're chayev for shein and regel. My loy lozeh v'loy lozeh. What does that mean? Ilay ma loy lozeh v'loy lozeh klal el da'achar. In other words, neither of us had permission to be there. So my animal, your animal, or your grain was in Eric's field, and my animal comes in and consumes all the grain. I'm exempt. Why? Because it has to be in your field. The stei achar says, unless you have permission to be there, if you didn't have permission, my animal has to eat in the field of the victim. But you had no permission to be there, my animal is exempt from that. It must be that actually you did have permission to be there, or it was your field. Uktani Seifa, and the Mishnah says Tam Shalom Chatzin Nezek and Mud Shalom Nezek Shalom. The problem is that the scenario that belongs to neither of them actually is a scenario where you are permitted to be there. One second, if you're permitted to be there, then it's your domain, and if it's your domain, Nezek Karen, the Mazik should pay Nezek Shalom for Karen. If my animal gores your animal, they should pay Nezek Shalom, not Chatzin Nezek. But the price says you pay Chatzin Nezek. 1 second, if it's your domain, because either you have permission to be there or it actually is your property, then it should be full payment according to Tarfin. Sason Rabbanon, it must be the rabbi's opinion. That say that Karen always pays half payment, even in the domain of the victim. There seems to be a contradiction in the Brisa. In one sense, the Brisa says in Chotzer HaNizik, Karen b'Chotzer HaNizik, Karen in the domain of the victim pays a full payment, and then the Brisa flips a moment later and says, "Well, not a full payment; it's actually half payment." Which opinion is it? So the Gemara says, "Reisha Rabbanon." The Reisha of Tarfin, Sefer Rabbanon. The first part of the Brisa is Tarfin that says you pay a full payment in the domain of the victim, and the second part is the rabbis, so you only pay half payment. So Gemara says, "Yeah, you're right." In the Amri Shmuel of Yehudah, Yehudah says to Shmuel says to Yehudah, "Shin in a sharp one." Shvaik masnisim v'tabas roi. Leave go of the Mishnah and listen to me. Reisha of Tarfin, Sefer Rabbanon. The beginning of the Mishnah is Tarfin. The Sefer of the Mishnah is the rabbis. Okay, there's no resolution. You're right. It's basically the Brisa is contradictory, and it's just too bad. Ravina Mishmei de Rav Omar. Ravina says the name of Rav Cooler of Tarfin. It's all the opinion of Tarfin. What does that mean? It belongs to neither of them. The scenario is Jules has a right to bring in his grain. But both of us have permission to bring our animals. With regard to grain, Jules had a right to bring his grain in, so therefore it's considered his domain with regard to the grain. However, but with regard to Karen, I had a right to bring my animal, and therefore it's like a public domain, and I only pay half the damages. Okay, so there's a technical problem here. Ihachi, what we're basically saying is the category where it doesn't belong to either one doesn't really exist. If that's the case, how many domains are there? Only 3, right? There's the public, there's mine and yours. And the domain that's neither of us, we said, doesn't really exist. Because actually, if neither of us had permission to be there, then I'd be exempt from Shein and Regal. So the domain of neither of us really doesn't mean neither of us. It really means you have permission to be there. The victim has permission to be there. So there's really only 3 categories. The victim has permission to be there, only the aggressor has permission to be there, or a public domain. It's only 3. On top of the base. There are 3 rules in 4 different places. And the 4th place, obviously, is a place that it belongs to somebody else, but the nizik has permission to be there. Okay. Now we get to the Mishnah. Mishnah is very unclear. We'll just see the Mishnah. The Mishnah just has a bunch of statements, and the Gemara will explain each one. So the
clear Mishnah in our
never happens. Shum kesef, an evaluation of money. That's number 1. Number 2, shava kesef, has to be worth money. Number 3, bifnei bezdin, in front of a court. Number 4, al pi edim, in front of witnesses. Number 5, b'nei chayron, free people. Number 6, b'nei bris, Jews. Number 7, v'hanoshim b'chlal, women are included. Number 8, hanizik, hanoshim b'chlal and ezik. Number 8 is v'hanizik v'hamatzik b'tashlumin. Both the aggressor and victim participated in the payments. We'll explain all of these. Okay, let's go to the first one. My shum kesef. What does it mean? The evaluation of money. Amar Yehudah, shum zeh lo yehei ela b'kesef. When you evaluate damages, you do it in money, currency. Nina lahad the Tanur. We learned this. This is what we learned in the Brisa as well. Para shehazika talis, talis shehazika para. So you had a talus, and it was in the public domain, and the animal trips over it and falls down. And then the animal finds the talus in the private domain, and he consumes the talus. He shreds it, stamps on it, he dirties it, whatever it is. Ain't I mean, we don't say Tetzi Para Batalas. Let's look at how much the Para damaged the Talis and how much the Talis damaged the Para. And we'll say the damages are covered by this Talis. What you do is you evaluate how much was the damage in value on each side, and then you require payment from whoever has more damage. The one who damaged more. The greater victim gets the payment, the difference between the amount that he was the aggressor and his net damages. So in other words, if the damage to the ox was $250 and the damage to the talus was $50, so the owner of the talus pays the owner of the ox $200. If, however, the talus was worth $500 and now it's worthless, and the ox that had $250 damage, the ox pays the other guy $250. Right? Okay. Times 45. 46. We'll start. I don't know if we'll finish it. Shava kesef. Okay, equivalent to money. What exactly does this mean? The Torah Rabbanon. Shava kesef malamich ein bezin iskaken el anachazim sheyesh lehen achrayas. What the Mishnah means is you only collect from property. Avlim kodem nizik v'tafas. But if the nizik goes ahead and grabs, movable items, objects. It's a bezin will evaluate them and allow him to collect from that he took. Amar, we learned. So Shava Kesef definition means you collect only from property. My mashma, how exactly does Shava Kesef mean you only collect from property? Shava Kesef means equivalent to money. How do you see that? Where does it say that in the Mishnah you only collect from property? Shava Kesef means equivalent to money. Where does that say property? Rabbi says, Bar Ula, son of Ula, Dover Hashava Kol Kesef. Property is something that will be worth the entire value of the damages. So in other words, Shava Kesef means you collect from that which will be worth the entire damage. What does that mean? It means, okay, so in other words, this is technically speaking, it's subjective. If your Shur Hamua damages my brand new car, it could be that the value of your property won't be as much as the car. But what's really the key argument? The key argument here is that property has a feature that it does not have a null. That means that typically if you overcharge or underdeliver at a rate of 1/6 the going price, the going range of prices, then it's called a null, and you have to the sale is canceled. But this is not true with regard to property. If you overcharge or underdeliver for property, it's too bad. And obviously the reason for this is because property inherently is very subjective. Specifically, we're talking here about property that's not sold by units. So you're talking about farmland that's sold by the acre or the quarter. Then it is sold by units. Then there is a no. But if you're talking about a property like a house, a neighbor might spend another $100,000 against the value of the house because he's a neighbor, and it's worth more to him to have two properties that are together. So therefore, there is a no as it pertains to. There's no no as generally speaking as it pertains to property. So this is means that if you overcharge a ridiculous amount, the sale is valid. Valid sale. It is valid.
So Trump was trying to tell the court that.
Yeah. Okay. Now, 1 second here. Okay. We'll continue tomorrow.